South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
Touchdown!
Sixers,
It's good!
and Flyers.
Oh, big save by Carter Hart.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Monday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter where you can watch the show. And, of course, you can join the conversation, as always, as we do each and every night here on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open for you, 609-403-0973. You can message the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City and, of course, on the YouTube stream. Phillies. I still don't know how they won 2 out of 3 against the Padres over the weekend, but they did. The Eagles are back on the practice field as they get ready for the third preseason game, which will probably determine at least a couple of roster spots. You can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. So it's going to be a very interesting week coming up. The Phillies are off today. They get back at it on Tuesday and Wednesday versus Tampa. Coming up on the show, we'll talk with Andy McNamara from Sportsnet. You'll hear him throughout the year talking some NFL. We'll get into some Eagles with him, also some fantasy football. I know some of you out there are getting ready for your fantasy football leagues out there. I know for me, I've been preparing part of today for the 97.3 ESPN War League we have amongst ourselves here at the station. I am the league manager now. I believe it's going to be my my 4th year as the league manager. So we'll pick Andy's brain a little bit on the fantasy football front as well. And as always, you guys can chime in, join the conversation as well. But I want to start with the Eagles because we did get some good news when it comes to the Jalen Hurts front. Okay. Obviously, he was back at practice yesterday, which is a good sign. He was missing practice, missing any activities Friday and Saturday. So as a result, you have a situation where I think that it's a good sign that he's recovered. It's a good sign that he's in a position to at least get back on the practice field. We won't know who's starting until the end of the week, right? We won't know for sure what's going on until the end of the week. But I do think that it's very important to keep in mind that these joint practices seem to determine a lot of what's going on with this football team, whether we like it or not. It's the stuff that we don't see that has more of an impact than what we do see. I mentioned this to Mike Gill earlier on the Sports Bash. Remember last week, all the reports coming out of camp is you have the ones beating the ones in terms of the Eagles versus the Patriots pretty much every day. That was the reports coming out, that the Eagles ones were better than the Patriots ones on offense and defense. The problem is that you didn't get to see that as much because during the actual preseason game at the link that many of you got to go and watch, or you watched on TV, whether you're there in person or watched on TV, guess what? No one played. Almost nobody played in that game. So how are we supposed to judge the game? You really can't. And that's why I feel like it's important to remember we can't judge the Eagles just on preseason games. We have to realize there are a lot of things that happen that we never see. Even Hard Knocks only gives you so much content on their show, even though this year's Hard Knocks is pretty poor. Okay? Even with that, we know for sure that the Eagles, they have a theory, they have a perspective on this team that we don't know about yet, and we may not know about until we get further along. And we just got to trust the Eagles coaches. We got to trust the players, what they're saying about the team. I know it's not ideal. I know it's not the way a lot of people would like it to be. But it is what it is. It's part of the mess that has been a result of this preseason. All the reports were that Jalen Hurts was going to play in game 2. And if he didn't have the stomach infection that Adam Schefter reported, then he probably would have played. And you would have gotten a better idea of what this team is going to look like week 1. Now, we may not know it off this week because I think Mike Gill made a good point earlier. Nick Sirianni is putting a heavy emphasis on these joint practices. And if you listen to former coaches and former players from around the league on different platforms, whether it's like NFL Network, which I watch, or if you consume ESPN or whatever platform you consume television-wise, everyone agrees that the joint practice allows you to prepare for specific scenarios, to practice specific situations in order for you to be able to be ready for those situations in a real live game. So if I'm the Eagles, I don't care as much about the preseason because if I can use the preseason to get certain things done, then you're in that situation. Again, I'm very curious to see how this week plays out because this week's going to tell us who we may or may not see. By the way, just a few seconds ago, the Eagles just made some roster moves that just came down about, according to Twitter, about 30 seconds ago. The Eagles have waived Jamon Osborne, Hakeem Butler, Harry Kreider, and Lavert Hill. So getting some more guys off the roster in preparation for the official 52 cut that is still to come. The only name of consequence on there is Hakeem Butler. Remember, Butler was the guy they brought in last year. They tried to make him into a tight end, and then they end up cutting him after that. And they brought him back in this year as to be maybe a tight end, but they had to move him to receiver because they were down some receivers at practice due to injuries with Devonta Smith and John Hightower. So, but the Eagles are trimming the roster. So that's the latest. A couple of wide receivers, a center, and a cornerback who will not be a part of joint practice this week. Apparently, the Eagles saw all they wanted from him. So interesting tidbit coming out from the Philadelphia Eagles, cutting 2 wide receivers. And it wasn't that Osborne or Butler were going to make the roster. Kreider definitely wasn't going to make the roster. Lavert Hill, I didn't think he was going to make the roster either. So it's not like any of these moves are earth-shattering, but it's just another sign that the Eagles continue to trim the roster as they get ready for the preseason. And again, if I would have asked you, the fans, about those 4 names, most of you could not even tell me a play that they played at all in Thursday night's game. But the Eagles saw something from them, or lack of something from them, in the joint practices and in the lead up to the preseason game that allowed them to say, you know what, we're disinterested. We're going to move on. Josh Hennig here. Game night on 97.3 ESPN. Still to come, Andy McNamara will join us to get more into the Eagles, the NFC East, fantasy football, and more coming up at 6:20 p.m. tonight. 609-403-0973 is the text board. We are also live on YouTube and Twitter. Just follow at 973 ESPN. Don't forget priority messaging into the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. How about the Phillies weekend? After they got swept by the Diamondbacks, I had no belief in this team that they were going to be able to beat out the Padres. But all of a sudden, they go to San Diego after being embarrassed, and they win 2 out of 3. And the game that they won yesterday was a return of Rhys Hoskins. And I still can't believe they scored 7 runs. They the first time they scored 7 runs since August 5th. It is absolutely insane to me that this team needs Rhys Hoskins that much. And I don't say that to diss Rhys Hoskins. I I've said it multiple times. I think Rhys Hoskins he's a good baseball player. He's at least a good hitter. Okay. He's a guy who hits home runs, doesn't have a great batting average, but he does give you the slugger that you need in the middle of your lineup. But just because you have a slugger in the middle of your lineup, shouldn't make that much of a difference, should it? Should it really be you scored 7 runs for the first time since the last time Rhys Hoskins had 2 RBIs in the game? What is that about? Yeah, Rhys Hoskins had 2 RBIs in the game yesterday. And the last time they scored 7 runs, he had 2 RBI in that game as well. I don't know how to explain it, but it's very obvious that this team, as currently constructed, really needs Rhys Hoskins out there. It's just a very, very strange thing to me. And again, it's not because I hate Rhys Hoskins, but you think about all the talent that's on this team, from Bryce Harper to JT Realmuto, a former MVP, and Andrew McCutchen. And it's Rhys Hoskins has to come in here and pick up the offense and get them going. I don't know if that says more about Hoskins or more about the lack of something with this baseball team. Is it a lack of passion? Is it a lack of desire? Is it a lack of punch? Is it a lack of effort? Is it a lack of focus? Whatever it is, Hoskins comes in the lineup and they start hitting yesterday. I don't get it. And if you go into this offseason, you got to make some tough decisions about formulating this roster, because it's becoming more and more apparent to me that you're going to have a changeover at least 2 positions, if not 4, heading in the next year. McCutchen's done here. You're going to need a new center fielder because the center field situation is just a dumpster fire. I don't know what's going on at shortstop or third base long term, or first, honestly, because if you keep Hoskins, can you really keep Bohm as well? Do you try Bohm again at third base? Do you move him to the outfield? Do you trade Hoskins because he has the most value, theoretically, for somebody else to play third base or play first base or play center field? I think that this team, it's very obvious that they have the ability to win the division, but they don't have the ability to win a World Series this year. I just think there's too many flaws with this team. I think they have enough duct tape and enough stickum to get them into the postseason. Because I think that Zach Wheeler is just that good that he should be putting you in a winning situation every single start. Kyle Gibson has done a good job since getting here. You're hopeful that Zach Eflin and Sir Anthony Dominguez are rejoining the team by the end of the month. They're both on rehab assignments. And we'll soon have Freddie Galvis, which will at least prove the defense. And we talked about it earlier on the Sports Bash about how the fact that, Freddie Galvis is much better against left-handed hitters than he is against right-handed hitters. And maybe you just platoon those 2 guys at shortstop. Doesn't really solve the third base situation, but at least you have shortstop at least covered. It's very interesting situation the Phillies are in as they return to face Tampa at home. And by the way, think about who you have lined up pitching-wise coming up in this homestand for the Phillies. Because you have a day off today, so everyone gets to rest. A day for the bullpen to recalibrate, a day for everyone to rest. You have Ranger Suarez tomorrow, Zach Wheeler on Wednesday, and then Matt Moore Thursday, Nola Friday, Kyle Gibson Saturday, Suarez again Sunday, and then they go on the road and have Wheeler, Moore, Nola down in Washington. And I don't know I don't know if this is just an ESPN thing, but it looks like right now there's still no starter name for Wednesday's game versus Wheeler versus Tampa. And they changed the starter for Tuesday. It was supposed to be Yarborough. Now it's going to be Rasmussen. So maybe you can catch Tampa at the right time for a 2-game set here. Very interesting to keep an eye on the Phillies moving forward. Josh Hennig hanging out with you here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, live here in the Matt Black Kia studios. Matt Black Kia, then we get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Coming up next, we'll get back into the NFL. Andy McNamara from Sportsnet joins me next, right here on 97.3 ESPN FM.
The Eagles are back, and the Sports Bash has them covered like nobody else in South Jersey.
E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles!
Listen for training camp updates every weekday at 4 p.m. during Football at 4 with Jeff Mosier, Adam Kaplan, and Andrew DeCecco. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 5:30. It's 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider Jeff Kerr and NFL insider Rob Motti from the Associated Press joins the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30. It's the best Eagles and NFL training camp coverage around, and it's only on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Touchdown! The Eagles win! The Eagles win!
On 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's exclusive radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football.
Football season is about to kick off, and that means it's time to list your football future bets on PropSwap. Did you know before the season started last year, the Buccaneers were 60-1 to win it all? Now that's a futures bet. You just never know what can happen. Or hey, maybe you do. Sports bettors cash in early and often when they list long shots on PropSwap. The average monthly seller makes $500 a month on PropSwap just posting and selling tickets. So join them by going to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and we are live as always on YouTube and Twitter. We're joining us to talk more about the NFL. Also, we're getting close to the season. That means it's time to talk a little fantasy football as well. The one and only Andy McNamara joins us, as he will each and every week throughout the football season, right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, as you see him live right now on YouTube and Twitter. Andy, how you doing today, my friend?
Oh, Josh, doing good, buddy. You said it. Getting ever closer. We're through 2 weeks of preseason, one more to go, and then it's go time. It's almost here.
It is almost here, but because we're only through 2 weeks of the preseason, we have a little problem here, and that is we're not getting all the information that we might need for the season because a team like the Eagles, new head coach, new offense, new quarterback doesn't play last week, stomach infection, may or may not play this week. So how do you judge a team like the Eagles if all you really know about them is, hey, they look great in joint practices, but on the actual preseason game, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge. And at the very least, Josh, at least we have more than last year, which was nothing. Remember, there was nothing last year. There wasn't any exhibition game. There wasn't any sort of real practice to gauge anything at all. So while we're not getting the full picture, it at least might give us some insight to position battles, depth chart. When it comes to fantasy football, is there somebody that a certain quarterback is paying more attention to in practice or preseason, or someone look really good? Just those types of information. But are we going to know for the Eagles whether Jalen Hurts is full go and looking unstoppable before the start of the year? No, we're not. And that's that's sort of the unfortunate part of it. But as we talked about on this program, we both believe in Jalen Hurts.
We do. And I know everyone doesn't because they feel they haven't seen enough from him.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we live in a world where Sean McVay told the media that, oh, Matthew Stafford doesn't start a single game in the preseason, play a single snap. On the flip side, Andy Reid says, no, I need Patrick Mahomes, my offense, out there for an entire half. So, I mean, there is no commonality when it comes to the NFL anymore when it comes to this stuff. So, for me, all I know about the Eagles is this. Sirianni and Steichen both worked with offenses that use their running backs a lot.
Right.
And the Eagles running back situation is set. We may not know 100% about the quarterback, but we know who the running backs are. Miles Sanders is your starter. Jordan Howard is your bowling ball / pass protector. And then Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott are your basically Swiss Army knife. So at least we know what the running back situation is.
Right. And you mentioned Gainwell. I like him as somebody for dynasty leagues, keeper leagues for down the road. I think that's a very interesting running back. And there's a reason. You have to follow the money, folks, right? You have to follow the draft capital. That's currency. So why, when you have Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, would the Eagles draft a Kenneth Gainwell? You got Jordan Howard parked in the back there too. Why would they? Well, what that means is you got to keep an eye on him. That's why, again, you look at either exhibition or practice or follow the beat reporters, whatever. Is one player or another getting a bit more time with a certain group or whatever? But for dynasty situations, Josh, I really like Kenneth Gainwell long-term. This year, it's obviously Miles Sanders. And we're going to see, I hope, just because we have so many committees already, I hope that we can have Miles Sanders as close to a bell cow situation as you can get in Philly. That's at least what I hope, because we know how many committees there are.
Well, it's true. Oh. I mean, listen, it's to a point where I feel like every time someone mentions to me their fantasy team right now, Andy, it's getting to a point where I'm like, you realize that guy's in a timeshare, right?
Yep.
Like for example, I heard that apparently a lot of people are drafting David Johnson down in Houston in their fantasy leagues, and I'm just like, why? Why did you not hear they brought in Mark Ingram? Did you not hear they have like 5 other running backs down there in Houston? Don't you realize Houston's gonna be a bad team this year? Like it's almost like people are they're drafting on hopes and prayers instead of reality. So it's like, hey, you can draft Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb because you know they're both gonna get significant touches, but very rarely do timeshares actually pay off for people.
It's true. It's very rare. You have a close situation that in Cleveland, like you said, with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, where Kareem Hunt can be, to a point, a standalone, maybe flex. I call them handcuffs with utility. It's a utility handcuff. It's not just some, like Chuba Hubbard with the Carolina Panthers. That's a pure handcuff. He's doing nothing unless Christian McCaffrey gets hurt. However, Kareem Hunt, in PPR situations, will catch the football, did score a bunch of touchdowns, can be used. So when you look at, let's say, the Houston Texans, which honestly, I don't want, like Josh, I don't want, and usually I can find something. I don't want anybody from the Houston Texans. I don't want one Houston Texans as a starter on my fantasy football team. Not one. I don't know if I've ever said that before. None. They're all useless. And we don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson, right? You want any one of those other quarterbacks? Like no, not interested. Just not interested in the Houston Texans this year. That's a team. If you're a Houston Texans fan, I hope you're watching a lot of college football because you're going to be right at the top of the draft.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM at Andy MC81. Check out all of his work over there with Sportsnet, talking fantasy sports, NFL, and more. Now, before we move on to the rest of the teams, I want to hit on one more thing with the Eagles. What do you think of their standing in the NFC East? Because depending on who you ask, okay, if you go to Vegas, Cowboys are the favorite. But if you go on the sports books, every team in the NFC East is at plus odds. So it's not like the Cowboys are overwhelming favorites out there. If you ask a Giants fan, they say they're going to sneak up on everybody. You ask a Washington fan, they say look out for our defense. You ask a Cowboys fan, they're going to tell you about how they have 3 rings. And then you go to the Eagle fans, and they're just like, we don't know.
We don't know what's going to happen. I think I feel it's going to be a more entertaining, close version of what the division was last year. Last year it was close, but it was not entertaining. It was just bad. It was just like nobody wanted to win that division. I feel everybody in this division now got a bit better, and that it will be a more interesting, entertaining way to watch this NFC East. Because when you look at the Eagles, like we said, I believe Jalen Hurts is going to get the job done. I do. I really do. I think whether Miles Sanders is a standalone guy or not, you have a good stable of running backs. You still got the tight ends in Goddard and Ertz that are going to be used. Is Devonta Smith going to be able to turn the page and come into the pros and be a day one contributor? Maybe, but you have at least pieces, right? I still feel if everybody is healthy and going, that Dallas offense is probably the way to lean if you're going to lay down a few bucks, just because they can be so overwhelming. And before Dak Prescott got injured, they were setting historic paces. So I still feel the advantage is to Dallas. But let me say this. Would it surprise me if the Eagles are hanging around in a wild card spot or contending with the Cowboys at the end of the year? It would not.
All right, let's get a little more big league picture, because here's the thing. The running back situation to me is going to be probably the most tenuous we've ever seen in fantasy football.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like there is a massive drop-off from everything I hear from guys like you, other people who talk fantasy football, people cover the league in general. It seems like you have a handful of guys in that top tier, and then there's just a huge gap. Like there's not this huge gap from tier 1 to tier 2 receivers, but there is a huge gap from tier 1 to tier 2 running back. So how are you handicapping the running back market in fantasy football?
I think what you have to do is, my advice is always get your top running back as soon as possible. Get the RB1. Okay. Now it depends where you're drafting, Josh, right? If you're in a 12-team league and you have 10, the 10th pick, you're not getting one of the top running backs. So then you have to adjust. If we're talking just running backs, when you get past that tier of Christian McCaffrey, who's the clear-cut number 1, Dalvin Cook, who's right there, Derrick Henry, of course, right? He's not catching the football, but it doesn't really matter because he'll run through you for 2,000 yards. Then you get to that next tier. And that's where I start looking at the Nick Chubbs, who still finished as a running back 8 in all of fantasy football last year, despite missing 4 games, has a new contract, right? You then look at guys like, okay, is like going into the year, Alvin Kamara. I downgrade him, Josh, because I'm not comfortable with the quarterback situation in New Orleans. I'm not. And we know if Taysom Hill's in there, Alvin Kamara's production drops. And that if Jameis Winston is there, he's not checking down. So I drop Kamara a bit. Do I still want him as an RB1? Yes, I do. But I'm not putting him in that upper echelon like we had before. So then the question becomes, where do you put like an Ezekiel Elliott? I believe his average ADP, he was coming off the board, I think is the 7th or 8th running back, which I think if you get him there, that is a steal. Zeke Elliott, I feel, is primed for a comeback year. So I want some shares of Zeke Elliott there. And then you lose a guy like a Josh Jacobs, who was an RB1 last year, or at least had the potential to be. You throw in Kenyon Drake. Well, now it's like we talked about earlier. We're in another committee, right? So that's where we're looking for guys who maybe are in that middle range. Aaron Jones, I think, is getting overlooked a little bit with all the Aaron Rodgers drama. I want some of Aaron Jones as well. So that's sort of where you look at Antonio Gibson too. It'll be interesting to see how Washington uses him, but that guy's more categorized to me, I think, as a weapon because you can line him up anywhere. So that's someone to keep an eye on as well.
That was the other thing I'm wondering, and that is, guys like Antonio Gibson, guys like Myles Gaskins, guys like that, where it's like, that they could have a huge game. Like, they're the kind of guys that can go out and get 25, 30 points for you in fantasy football. They're the guys who can go out and get you 90 rushing yards, 90 receiving yards in a game easy.
Yeah.
But my question is, will they be used that way consistently because who their quarterbacks are? Ryan Fitzpatrick, is the magic in? Is the magic out from week to week? And then Tua, listen, Tua's played a good amount this preseason. And I got to tell you, I don't know what Tua is. I really don't. I don't know if he's the guy that we saw at Alabama, or is he the guy who had 90 yards passing last year? Like, I don't know what he's going to be because some downs he looks amazing. And other downs, I'm like, ooh, that was ugly. Ooh, what was that? So I don't know what to do with him, Andy. So to me, I look at guys like Gaskins and Gibson, and I'm like, those guys are so dependent on which quarterback shows up from week to week. It's a little tenuous for those offenses.
I'm totally with you. I would feel more comfortable in rolling with Gibson just because of his freak athletic ability. And I have to keep coming back to it. It's stuck in my head forever that Ron Rivera categorized him. He wants to use him as a Christian McCaffrey type of weapon. Is he Christian McCaffrey right now? No, he's not. But that guy, he was more of a receiver in his very limited snaps in college. Yes. So you can pop him out, and you might be able to take advantage of him with a Ryan Fitzpatrick with the arm. Or you can put him in the backfield. Or you can mix and match, but then you add in different guys like a Curtis Samuel into the mix. Well, what type of gadget is he? Does that cut into Gibson? Out of the two, I definitely would prefer Gibson because that Miami offensive line, boy, no matter how talented Gaskin is, I don't trust it. I don't like it. I think that is their weak spot. And it's going to be interesting to see what Tua, like you said, what is Tua? Miami has put all, outside of a great offensive line, all the offensive weapons around him. You got your comfort blanket, Jalen Waddle from college. That's your guy. Okay. You got Devontae Parker. Fuller's going to come back after his suspension. You have Gaskin. You got Gesicki. So how do you use the running game? I think you certainly there's certainly a path for Myles Gaskin to be successful, but I'm with you. So if I'm ranking Gaskin on my fantasy to-do list and on my team, I don't want him as my top guy. He has the talent to be a top guy, but I don't want him to be my RB1. If I can get Gaskin as my second running back, I'd be feeling pretty good, but I do not want to rely on him as my number one.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at AndyMC81 on Twitter for all of his NFL and fantasy sports analysis over at Sportsnet. Joins us each week throughout the football season right here on 97.3 ESPN. Andy, let's hit on some of the situations with these quarterbacks. Obviously, we have still outstanding quarterback jobs out there. Tonight, we're going to figure out what's going on with New Orleans, we hope at least, with Winston and Hill. Cam Newton's out in COVID protocols. Apparently, he went to the wrong person to get a COVID test, or he missed a COVID test, depending on who you ask. I'm so confused what's going on there. Apparently, you can only get a COVID test from an NFL certified, which you think you know that by now, but whatever. Does Mac Jones become the default because Cam Newton's not available? I don't know what's going on in New England. I feel like the only way anybody in Denver has value in fantasy is if Teddy Bridgewater's quarterback. Okay. And then let's be realistic. It's not a competition, but Carson Wentz is at practice today and he's running around on that foot like everything's fine, which is ridiculous because we were told 5 to 12 weeks and now he might start week 1. So what do you do with these quarterback situations, Andy?
Yeah. Well, the Carson Wentz one's the most surprising, right? Because like you said, 5 to 12 weeks, I was like, we were talking on the show, Josh. It's like, well, we got to forget about the Colts players for your fantasy team. Well, now, okay, Carson Wentz is coming back. Is it too soon? Like, I don't know about you, but you guys, you Eagles fans, you know how easily Carson Wentz could go down. So right. He's back, but how long is he going to be back? That scares me. I want to go back to your Teddy Bridgewater comments. I'm 100% with you. From a selfish fantasy perspective, I want Teddy Bridgewater. Why? Not because he himself is going to be fantasy relevant, but because he proved in Carolina last year, he can make the pieces around him fantasy relevant. He made DJ Moore fantasy relevant. He unlocked Robbie Anderson, right? You can make his play. And in Denver, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Hamler, Fant. So Teddy Bridgewater can distribute the football effectively while still not being a QB1 himself. Drew Lock, technically, this is sort of his prove-it year, but I'm not going to be holding my breath. I think Drew Lock is going to be, after this year, a guy who floats around for 2 or 3 more as a backup, and then adios. We don't hear about Drew Lock anymore. That's personally how I feel about it. So fantasy-wise, I think you go with Teddy Bridgewater. And then in New England, like, Josh, I don't know why. I believe it's this. I think Bill Belichick is so caught up with the trying to win now, as far as like not win a Super Bowl, but like make the playoffs and not be embarrassed by Tom Brady, that you're sacrificing the future. Do you really think Cam Newton's going to be your quarterback for the next 5 years? If you do, fine. I don't think they do. That's why you took Mac Jones in the first round. Why with 2 quarterbacks with completely different skill sets, where if you have Cam Newton in and he goes down, you cannot trot out Mac Jones with the same playbook. You got to change all of it. Why do you not start your rookie quarterback from day one and do it that way? That I don't know. If he's your future, why don't you do it that way? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. Let's go to a division right now, because to me, the NFC West is going to be the most exciting division of football this year. I think any 4 of those teams can win it. I feel like you can make an argument for any of them. But who should we keep an eye on? Like, which is the team that because we're going to keep an eye on all of them. But if you had to isolate one, Andy, if you had to say, listen, man, you Eagle fans, you Giant fans, you Cowboy fans, whatever team you are a fan of, Steeler fans we have out here, if you're going to watch one team for the NFC West in that 4 o'clock slate every weekend, who are you focusing in on, Andy?
It is a fascinating division because you have questions all across it. Like you said, there's not that sure one, like, okay, yep, these guys are going to absolutely win it. Let's do a quick synopsis of them, Josh. Let's go. Arizona Cardinals, you got Kyler Murray. Okay. Now, top fantasy quarterback, but real life wise too. He got banged up a little bit. Is that size at some point going to come back and get him? I think it will, but heck, that offense is really good, really clicking, and you got a lot of weapons. And you have the Rams, Matthew Stafford, certainly arm talent upgrade over Jared Goff with finally a creative offensive head coach. Can they unlock Matt Stafford again? Maybe, but you also don't really have a running game. San Francisco, Jimmy Garoppolo versus Trey Lance. I'm not going to pick the 49ers. And then Seattle Seahawks, old, reliable Russell Wilson. So just based on sort of, if you look at the whole division, sort of what we know and what's established, I'm going to say Seahawks are the team that you want to watch if you want a winner. I think most exciting wise, just because of all the offense, is probably the Arizona Cardinals, just for pure entertainment.
Very, very interesting. So you're saying for entertainment purposes, go Cardinals.
I'm saying if you just want to tune in and you're like, look, I don't have a vested interest. I just want to chill and watch some exciting football. The Cardinals run the most plays out of like anybody.
True. And
you got a little water spider guy, Kyler Murray zipping around. That's probably the most exciting one there. But if you want to watch and pick who's going to win, who has the best chance to win that division, I got to go with the Seattle Seahawks right now.
It's very interesting because I feel like there could be an argument made for all 4 of those teams. And I'm so conflicted right now. I feel like every day my mind keeps switching teams.
right
at this point. And that, I honestly, though, I feel like the only team I'm not really sold on is actually Arizona, because until I see them do it, I'm not 100% sure.
That's fair.
But I feel like I've seen Seattle win the division multiple times. I've seen Russell Wilson do what he does. I know the 49ers got to a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And then the Rams were in the Super Bowl even before that. So I feel like you have three teams. They all have coaches who have gotten them to the postseason. I'm still waiting on Kingsbury to do something, because remember, he did have a losing record in college.
He did. Absolutely. And that's why you're right. You're going to have to see it. How does it work? How do you use that running back situation too? That now there's a committee with Chase Edmonds and James Conner. By the way, I think even though that's a committee right now, we know James Conner can't stay healthy. Get yourself some Chase Edmonds. Get him. You can wait on him. He's not going to be a popular pick. You can probably get him mid-round. Get him, because when James Conner, seems like it's an inevitability, unfortunately for him, that he's going to go down with injury, Chase Edmonds takes over. And we saw in duty last year where he did, on the rare occasion, get some standalone, he could produce. So that's somebody you want to keep an eye on as well. But yeah, like for the Cardinals, can they put it all together? You got all the toys. All the toys are there. What are you doing with them? And I think we're going to find out a lot about that team and Coach Kingsbury this year, if he's the guy and that setup is the way to win in that division.
Chase Edmonds, a draft and stash candidate.
Yes,
for
absolutely.
Your fantasy drafts there. Andy, before I let you go, let's tell the folks again about what you're up to with the UFF.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the UFF Sports and the Ultimate Fantasy American Football League. Actually, Josh, today we just finished our 53-round NFL veteran player draft. That went over 3 grueling days that I think have aged me incredibly. But that's the veteran draft. On Friday, we're doing our rookie auction where people are buying with real money rookies to go on their team. And this is where we have the ownership group of Chris Carter, Michael Vick, and Bud Crawford, the boxing champ, with the first overall pick. They took Patrick Mahomes, by the way. You have the hockey side, Martin St. Louis, Steven Stamkos, Brad Richards as an owner group, and some CFL guys, Nick Lewis as well in the ownership group category. So we're rolling through that, and we're getting ready. I'm actually setting up now for in October, we're going to be doing our Legends League auction for franchises. As we get closer, I'm going to tell you guys all about that, because Josh, man, that's going to be absolute next level stuff.
Give him a follow on Twitter at AndyMC81. Covers fantasy football in the NFL for Sportsnet. He joins us each week here on 97.3 ESPN. Andy, always appreciate the football conversation. We'll talk next week.
Absolutely, Josh. Talk to you soon.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as you saw, Andy McNamara live on the YouTube and Twitter streams. We'll get the other guys' comments on the other side. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. You can join the conversation there as well. And, of course, you can direct message the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles finish the 2021 preseason this Friday night against the New York Jets.
Takes the snap. Here comes the rush. Let's go. Complete into the end zone. Touchdown, Zucker.
Maryland Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
On some models excludes core bet with GM financing, excludes price sale. See dealer for details.
Have you seen what some dealers are now charging for new cars and used vehicles? It's outrageous. But at Bennett Chevrolet, you still pay what GM supplier employees pay for brand new Chevys. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates. That's not either or, you get both. And that can save you up to 25% off MSRP. And Bennett has 0% financing available to save you even more. Got a trade? Bennett's paying top dollar. And we mean top dollar. A minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum $7,000 for any old clunker you can tow to our lot. And if it's in good shape, we'll pay more. And we'll buy your vehicle even if you don't buy one of ours. And Bennett makes it so easy. No sales pressure, no negotiating, just pure joy. Because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So you can see why nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet. Nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
More Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live, as always, on YouTube and Twitter. Get to some of your thoughts and comments now. Of course, text board is always open at 609-403-0973. Direct message to show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First, thanks to Seattle City. Of course, you can join the show's conversation as well on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN is where you can watch the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with Josh Hennig, and, of course, the Locker Room with Billy Schweim. All the local shows here on 97.3 ESPN FM. But don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Download it for free from the Apple Play Store or Google Play. Make sure you get all your Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers analysis, as well as coverage of local high school sports here in South Jersey, all free through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. As I mentioned, you get priority messaging into the show thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Text came in a little bit earlier. We were talking about running backs, and they asked what about Saquon Barkley? And here's the thing with Saquon, Texter. Because Saquon's coming off of an injury, you tend to, as a general principle, okay? I'm not saying this is what you should do, but I'm saying a lot of evaluators, as a general principle, tend to look at that situation and say, don't draft him too high because he's coming off of an injury, because the Giants' offensive line is a concern, because we don't even know what Daniel Jones is at this point. So for me, I look at this as a scenario where, listen, I think Saquon's going to have a bounce back year because I just believe in Saquon, the running back. All right. But I don't believe in the Giants as a team. And I think for some evaluators, they have trouble elevating Saquon too much because he's coming off an injury and he plays for a team that we just have a lot of questions about. So that's how I look at it. That's how I treat it. Listen, I'm not saying if you're playing fantasy football, you shouldn't draft Saquon. I'm not saying if you're looking at the Giants, you shouldn't have faith in Saquon bouncing back and having another big year. But listen, I look at the Giants and I have questions about the offensive line. That's a big part of a running back's success. You know, if Saquon has to do a ton of extra work when he's out there running the ball, it's going to put wear and tear on him. If the offensive line does great, then I think that's going to help the offense overall. And the better the Giants' offense is, the better for Saquon. And it's a cycle. So that's how I look at the Barkley situation. I think you can't put Barkley in the top tier of running backs, like the number 1, 2, or 3, but you definitely could put him in like after the big guys, because obviously it's Christian McCaffrey is number 1. I think most people would agree as of right now, he's number 1. How you want to rank the other guys after that is up for debate. Obviously Saquon, when he's healthy, he's in that top tier, right? Ezekiel Elliott, his productivity leaves him in that top tier. Nick Chubb, his productivity puts him in that top tier. Austin Eckler, his versatility puts him in that upper tier of backs. You know, but when you look at some of the guys after those guys, Aaron Jones is close to that group of guys, but I don't think he's the same caliber of running back. Dalvin Cook, he's never healthy, so can you really trust him out there? Joe Mixon, how good is that offense going to be? You know, the offensive line didn't do much to address it this offseason in Cincinnati. Najee Harris is a rookie. You expect him to get a lot of work over there in Pittsburgh, but how good can he really be? You know, you just go around the league. You know, Antonio Gibson is not a top tier running back. He's the next tier down, right? You know, I tend to look at running backs and I tend to tier them and grade them in terms of how their offense is. You know, if I believe you have a good offense and you're a good running back, that makes you an elite option. But if you're a very good running back on a poor team, you're a lesser version of Barry Sanders. That's how I tend to look at it. And by the way, Saquon, at this rate, he is Barry Sanders because he's not on a great team. Josh Hennig here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. All right, don't forget 97.3 ESPN mobile. Download for free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. I'll catch you next time.